It's kind of an abrupt transition to go from Jack's lovely English accent to my less than lovely Southern accent. Um, Maybe I could write it and we'll just have Jack do my part and everyone will perk up and really listen closely. There was at the very first church that Rachel and I served in a little town in Idaho, one of our members was Scottish. And it was amazing how everyone, just like when Jack reads, everyone would perk up when there was a lovely accent to do the scripture reading. Well, today we're gathered, as you well know, at St. Peter's United Methodist Church, and just outside this space is a rock that you all probably passed on the way in. Did anyone make notice of it? Yeah, Mitzi did. Okay, Kim did. All right. What did it say on it? There's your quiz. Pardon? That's right. It has today's, actually it's the Mark version, but it has today's scripture reading. And legend has it, and Judy will correct me if I get this story wrong. Legend has it that as they were establishing this church and as they were searching for a name, they were looking around at the various possibilities. We live in Bellevue, which means, pretty view and looking out at lakes. So there was like Sammamish UMC and all sorts of other things. One of them was possibly Sherwood Forest UMC, which I like. And then there was one member, some of you might remember, who really wanted Emmanuel, which is a lovely name, and it would have joined every third United Methodist Church that is named Emmanuel United Methodist Church across the country. And then as they were working on the property and getting ready to build, they unearthed a rock, and not just a little one, but if you walk out there, it's big, and we don't know how deep it goes, but I suspect it's pretty deep. And somebody said, that reminds me of something. Reminds me of this text, this part of our sacred story, where Jesus asked to the disciples, who do you think that I am? And Peter answered him, you are the Messiah. And he answered that, you are the Messiah, in Caesarea Philippi, which was kind of a dangerous place to say something like that out loud. Now, that area is known for its natural beauty. It's got little waterfalls and all of that, and there was a special cave, it's still there today in Caesarea Philippi, that had a spring of water in it, a constantly flowing spring of water into a pool. And it was believed by the occupying Romans that spring of water was a gift from the god Pan. And so there was a lot of Roman presence there, and they built up shrines and all of this. And Herod was given control of that area, and it was really important to the Roman presence in that area. So it was there in that Roman-controlled area that Peter declared to Jesus and to everyone that was listening, you are the Messiah. And Jesus, in reply, said to him, I will build my church on you. And that text got me thinking today about what Peter did and about the notion of proclamation and the notion of witnessing and all of those good churchy words that make a lot of people squirm. So let's be honest that as modern Christians, and most of us in here would probably, even though if we don't like the word, would fall in the category of progressive Christians, even though I know some people don't like that term, I bet there's a lot of these words like proclamation and witnessing and evangelism and all of that make us squirm, that we do not like. And I think today's topic of proclamation and proclaiming and witnessing and all of that makes us a little uncomfortable. But rather than ignoring the word, rather than ignoring the concept, or pretending that Jesus didn't ask his followers to go and make disciples, which he did, or pretending that he didn't instruct his followers to go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to all creation, which he did. I think it's important that we revisit these concepts and reclaim them and understand them in a way that works for us, because they still matter. And so today we're going to spend time on declaration and proclamation and all of that. So proclamation is really nothing more and nothing less than a public declaration. It's making a statement that people can hear or see. So what is your favorite coffee shop? I'll just ask that. Starbucks. Okay. Pardon? Diva Espresso. Starbucks. Okay. So are you willing to say out loud that that is a good coffee shop? Yes. Okay. You just made a proclamation. What is a restaurant that you enjoy? The what? The best walk. Okay. Are you out loud willing to say that it is a good restaurant? Yes. And it's worth visiting? Okay. Look at that. So now what I want y'all to do is go out on the street corner and tell people about Jesus. I want you to, let's go up, you guys go to Crossroads and go tell people, like, it's funny that we could go up to Crossroads, and if we found a really good restaurant or coffee shop or something like that, we wouldn't have a ton of trouble, even with some strangers, to say, you know what, that's a really good place to go. But ask us to go and share about church and about grace and all of that, and just about every one of us, myself included, would be like, no, I will not be doing that. It makes me desperately uncomfortable. And so the notion of proclamation, the notion of stating something publicly is a hard one. It's a really hard one for us all. And I think in particular it's hard for us as sensitive, intelligent people, because we're aware of how obnoxious it can be when people proselytize, and how I think it does many times more harm than good. So one of the questions for us today is how do we proclaim something? How do we proclaim what we believe in and what we hope for and what our values are in a way that isn't just obnoxious and dangerous and destructive? For Peter, making a proclamation was an important part of his faith journey. And we don't know if he said it just to Jesus, or if he said it at the top of his lungs. But at least to Jesus, he said out loud, "You are the Messiah." So what does it mean for us to proclaim? What does it mean for us as we move towards Easter and as we journey along with Peter? It played an important role in his faith. And it might play an important part in ours. As we exist in a faith community in today's context, or as we begin a new chapter in the life of these two congregations together with our history and strengths and all of that, I wonder what it means to live publicly and to declare something. I will admit that, and I realize with my wife's help, I think she's here today, I thought I saw her, that I inherited something from my mother, and that is a propensity to not like attention, despite being up in front of people, that I don't like attention. I don't like, certainly don't like being on the news or in the newspaper or anything like that. And so one of the things I've had to work on over the years as a clergy person is sometimes there are times when it's important to stand up and be counted and be noticed. And I think for us congregations, sometimes our temptation is to is to be very quiet. There's a phrase that's attributed to St. Francis, even though there's no actual record of him saying this, but I like to think that he did, so we'll just roll with it. And I bet you can say this word for word too. Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words. I mean, it's instruction and a reminder that everything that we do says something, right? And everything that we don't do says something. And I think that's one of the deeper learnings of congregations. And it's one of my deeper learnings over the 20 years I've spent leading congregations, and even just in my day-to-day faith, that everything that we do, every choice that we make, everything we decide not to do is a statement of faith. It's a statement of belief. It's a statement of values. And that's a tough one. When I first started my church journey, it was church attendance and faith moment on Sundays that had absolutely no bearing on my Tuesdays, and certainly no connection to my bank account or anything like that. And it took a little while for me to start to understand that they can't be separate, that it has to be connected. And that how I was approaching my checking account, even as a young man, and there wasn't a lot in there, was a statement. It was a proclamation, even if nobody was listening or seeing it but me. Preach the gospel at all times. Sometimes that's pointed back into our own hearts as it is out to the world. One of my questions for us is, what are we doing that's a statement about who and what we believe? And that's a reflection question. I bet it would be easy to hear it as an accusation or criticism. But it's not at all. It's just a reflection question. What are we doing that's a statement about who and what we believe? What are we doing that is a declaration of our belief that all people matter? All people. Their lives are as valuable as ours. Whether or not we agree with them politically, whether or not they live in this country, whether or not they're old or if they're very young. What are we doing that declares our belief that there has to be a better way of living life together than how we're doing it, with so few haves and so many have-nots? What are we doing that declares our belief, that I hope we're united in, that war generally is a bad thing, right? That there has to be a better way. What are we doing that declares our belief, again, I know I'm speaking for all of us, and some of you may disagree with some of these, but I hope not, that we can do better in our stewardship of this world so that there is life abundant for all, and not just people, but animals go extinct every day? It's shocking. It's tragic. I know that folks, myself included, are generally uncomfortable with personal proclamation and things like that. And sometimes we're even uncomfortable when our churches do it, when we make a stand, when we make a statement. But I think it's important for us to remember that I bet none of us would be here in this church as a part of this faith family, faith community, if there hadn't been somebody in our lives, maybe it was a parent or a friend or somebody who lived their faith out openly and shared it enough that we were a little curious and said, maybe that's worth trying out. And I'll remind you, even though I probably don't need to, that both of these two great congregations that I have the privilege, the honor of pastoring and being a little part of your story, in your history and even in your present, has made some powerful declarations. Right now, St. Peter's has an affordable housing project that it's been working on for a decade and working very hard on. And that's a proclamation, isn't it? It's a profound statement that we've, as a congregation, have been gifted with incredible resources, and it's important to do something with that. It's not just for the group of people who worship here. That's a declaration. That's a proclamation of values. It's powerful. Bellevue first hosts Transgender Day of Remembrance. That's a powerful proclamation that all lives matter. And there's more. I know each congregation, if we were to look back a few years ago, or a decade ago, or 15 or 20 years, you have a long history of doing things that are statements that say, this matters. Grace matters. Food matters. A place to live matters. These ministries that you have done and that you're doing now are part of how we spread some grace and some hope and some good news into this world that's basically tough for everybody. And I'm reminded today, and I'm reminded as I think about the good work that you have done and that you do right now, is that, like Peter's proclamation, it takes bravery. It takes bravery to do this stuff. Any true statement of faith takes bravery. Just about anything that we do that is actually worth doing, anything we do that includes the excluded, takes some bravery. Anything that we do that houses the unhoused takes bravery. Anything we do that feeds the hungry, anything that we do that seeks justice, anything that has to do with spreading grace and love takes bravery, because it stands in contrast to what the world would have us do, which is basically to be quiet and not make trouble. The world likes the status quo. But that's not what we're here to do. Jesus said that Peter, who we know and we're discovering through this Lent, was very human and made mistakes and lost faith and focus and then got scared and then rebounded. Jesus said that Peter would be who the church was built on, not because he was perfect, not because he got it right all the time. In fact, he was one of the disciples who seemed to really have moments of like, he gets it, like today, and then seemingly a few minutes later, he's oblivious. And one of my former colleagues called the disciples the disciples, just because so much they seem to miss it. But it's Jesus talking to Peter, who is a mess. So human, saying, you are who I'm going to build the church on. Peter, it means Petra, it means rock. Why? Why Peter? And I think today's a reminder that the foundation of the church is a willingness to preach and proclaim and declare and act and build and work so that something new, something holy, something good might happen for all of God's people. And so we're called to preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use some words. And so this Lent, and today, we are invited to recommit ourselves to this calling, this part of our journey in faith. To live publicly, to be brave, to follow Christ, to proclaim that grace is real and that there is a reason to hope, and that this system that we're living in, where it seems like the mantra is the person with the most toys when they die wins. We're called to preach something different, something that frees and liberates. So today we're invited to recommit ourselves to this calling. And as we come to this table, let us offer ourselves once again in thanksgiving and praise as we are called. So I invite you to remain seated, but turn in your hymnal or look on the screens as we turn to hymn 628, Eat This Bread, and we're just going to sing it a few times as we move into this time of our Holy Communion.